Okay, dear class, we are moving on to week 8. In the week 8, we have two modules that we're going to focus. So, Access Module 2, which will focus on querying a database, and Access Module 3, which will focus on managing a database, right? So, I'm going to post the video here right below this heading. And as you can see, these are the links for the chapters itself if you want to read. And these are the project files itself, and then we have training videos down below, which will be training on the MindTap website. Alright, so let's get started with Access Module 2, SAM Project 1. So as usual, click on it and let us download the start files and instruction file, and we're going to save them to its own folder. Start, instructions, save file, and in my folder I'm going to create a new folder here, right? And I would like you to do the same and name it as Access. Very important to manage your files and organize them into folders. Alright, so we are doing Access Module 2 project. Okay, so into that folder I'm going to save my instruction file, and I'm going to download my start file. Oops, did I open it? It looks like it. Yeah, so I'm going to save it. So file, save as, and let me see if I can get to my folder. Online, there it is. So I'm going to change this number 1 to number 2. Save, enable editing. So here we are. So how many tables do we have in here? So the grading info table, we're not going to worry about it. All it has is your first name, last name, some assignment ID, and then user ID. So close it. And other than that, the project is continuation of our Access Module 1, in the sense that the data that we are using, it is still based on advertiser company. So as you can see, we have addrep table with all this information here, and it has 7 records. And advertiser table, so we have these data that we imported, remember, from Excel to Access. So we have about 24 records. And billboard table, so we have about 37 records here. So I'm just opening each table to see what's in there. So states table, we have about 4 records. Alright. So, and then when it comes to queries, so this module basically focuses on more querying. So we did do one query and then a criteria in Access Module 1, but in this module we'll mainly focus on modifying the existing queries and creating new queries, adding like a compound, like more than one criteria for a query. And then in addition to that, we're going to learn how to, so Access has 5 types of queries, right? So if you click on any one of those and then go to let me expand this for a minute, so, and switch to design view. So as you can see, the query type, right? So Access gives us 5 types of query. One is select query, and then append query, update query, cross tab query, and delete query, right? So these are the different types of query we have. And so far, as you can see, the first, this is as you open it in a design view, this is highlighted, right? That means this query is of type select query. That means we're going to select these records based on some criteria, whereas append query, which will append the records into the table. Update query will update the records that match certain criteria. And then crosstalk query we use when we have two groups of data among that, right? Delete query is used to delete records from a table, right? Based on what we are trying to do, we're going to select such type of query, right? Not only that, in criteria, so we can have a criteria more than one field at a time, and you can also have a criteria, so for a criteria row, and then there is also R row here, right? That means if you have two conditions, two criteria, and you want results to display if either one of the condition is true, then we're going to put it in R. If you want two conditions and the records that it's going to pull out, you want the records based on two conditions. When two conditions are true, then we're going to put the criteria in same criteria row, right? So anyway, so we'll do that when we get into the project. All right, so those are 5 types of query we have, Access gives us, and more to it, right? So let us get into the project that we will learn more. So let me open my instruction file so we could read the steps and then follow along. By the way, great job on Access Module 1. I do see majority of you are successful in doing that. I'm really happy about it. Even though we are new to Access, you guys did a terrific job, like remarkable job in completing it, right? Alright, so let's get started. So we did the getting started. And the step number 1, it says open the billboard listing query in a design view. So these are all the available queries I have. In here, I'm interested in opening billboard listing query in a design view. Right click on billboard listing query and then select design view. So as you can see, this is again a select type of query, right? So that means you match for exact criteria here. So in this so this is the query design view of this particular query, and then this is your design grid, right? So at any given point of time, you can use the scroll brush to scroll to see all the fields here. So we have billboard ID, location, city, state, height, and all these fields, and then facing, right? Step number 1 is asking us, go ahead and delete the facing field from the query. Notice we are only deleting from the query. The facing field is still there in a table, but only in the query we're going to delete it, right? So save and run the query. So before we do that changes, so I would like to run it and see what we get, right? So this query is basically listing all the records from the billboard table whose state is equal to WA, and not only that, it is pulling these records here, right? So facing, we have north, south, north, south, north, south, and then east, west. So our step number 1 is asking us to delete this field in this particular query, right? So let's learn how to do that. Switch back to design view. And the easiest way to delete is click on that cell next to it, right? So the field that you want. So use the backspace button to delete it and then save it. Now as soon as you do that, notice that field is gone, and now let us run it. You see that field is no longer there, right? So that was step number 1. So that's how you delete a field that you do not want in your query using query design, right? So simply just delete the field. So that was step 1. Moving on to, so we want to close it, right? So each time, this is a crucial thing that we need to remember, is that when you're done working on an object, so you want to close it, right? So these are all access objects. So these are called as objects. So we have table objects, we have queries objects, and so on and so forth. Alright, so we don't have any forms and report in this file, which is fine. So our goal is to just work with these queries here. Step number 2 is to create a new query using query design based on addrep table with the following options. So in order to create a query in a query design, we don't need to select a table here, but we'll just click on create tab and then query design. So earlier we did query wizard, now we're going to do query design. So we get this show table window. So if you don't see this, you might want to click on show table button here, but by default it does give us the show table window. In here you're going to select which table you want. So you want addrep table, so select this and then add it, and you're only interested in one table right now, so we're going to close it, right? So we got our table here. So you can use these edges to expand to see all the fields, and you can also make it like a wider if you want to. And you'll notice the star is used when you want all the fields from this table, you want it in your query, right? What happens if you don't put any field in here? That means you don't get any records, right? So that's why you need to tell Access what fields you need, and then accordingly you can fetch the records for you, right? So let us add these fields, and you want to add them in that order, right? So you want to add this addrep number, last name, first name, and date hired to the query in that order. So the order is important, right? So you can either drag this and then drop it into this box, or you can just usually use this drop down list. So I usually like to click on it and then click on this arrow and then addrep number, and then the next field I want in the list is last name followed by first name, then I think it's date hired. Let me double check. Yeah, date hired. Okay, so those are my fields. And not only that, we're gonna do what's called as sorting. So we're gonna do, there are ascending and descending, two types of sorting, and we can do that for date hired field. So there is a sort row in the design grid. So in the sort row, right below date hired field, we're gonna click on it. So we get the insertion point, and then we're going to click on the arrow next to that, and we're going to select ascending. Ascending will sort the records from low to high. So basically in this case, since we are doing in a date hired, the lowest date will be like 24 all the way 2017, right? From 24 all the way 2017 will be the order. So now let us save this query one as addrep hired query. So I'm going to delete this one, leave the query as is, and then before that we're going to type addrep hired query. Say okay, and we got the summary here, right? So addrep hired query, so it's listed as the first one here. Let us run it. Look at that. So this is your output. That means these are the records that matched, that you wanted to pull out from addrep table. There were only 7, but we got all the 7 because we asked for those fields. And look at the date hired. Is it sorted or is it unsorted? It is sorted, and then it is also sorted in an ascending order. That means we have a date, lower date, and then a higher date here, right? So low to high. Save, and then probably we want to close this. Yep, close it. So that was step 2. Moving on to step 3. So in the step 3, we're going to create what's called as parameter query, right? What is a parameter query? So parameter query is a way to prompt for user to type something. That typing something will be the criteria for your query, right? So let me show you how to do that. So create query design, and in this step I guess we are interested in which table? Billboard table. So select this, add, close. Okay, now I'm going to expand this a minute so I can see all the fields in this table, and probably I have some space here. Let me just arrange it like that. Okay, so I can read entire step now. So create a new parameter query in a design view based on billboard tables. So first, before we get into parameter query, so we are working with this query. Let us add these fields in that order. Okay, in that order is important. So I want billboard ID field, location field, and DAC field, and city field. Then I want state field, right? Okay. Next, for a criteria, so earlier we did like WA for matching the criteria. In this case, we're gonna match the criteria, but user is gonna enter whatever state user likes. So for example, when I run this query for the first time, there will be a window wherein user will type in the state that he wants to pull the record from. So for first when I run it, I can type in WA, and if I run it again, I can type WY, and if I run it again, I can type ID, right? So each time you run it, you can ask user to enter the data that they want. Based on that, the query is going to look for the records that match that criteria, right? So you need to tell Excel how it is a parameter query. So we indicate that it is a parameter query by starting with the open square bracket, and this is the title that you're gonna ask. So enter state, that means you're asking user to enter the state, the 2-letter state name, and then close square bracket. So as soon as it sees this open square bracket and close square bracket, Access knows that it is a parameter query. That means it's gonna give a window for user to type in the state value, right? That's how Access knows that. And where are we going to do this? Under criteria row. For which field? For state field. So we're going to start with open square bracket. Why? Because we're creating a parameter query. So by typing open square bracket, Access knows that it is a parameter query. And we're going to type in whatever text you want. So enter state, or you can type please enter the state that you want to pull the records from. So this is like a prompt that you give user. So enter state. So for the state field, enter state, that means it's gonna, whatever the user is gonna type in the box, the query is gonna match for that criteria, and then it's gonna display for us. All right, so let us save this. You'll see in a minute what I mean by enter. Right, so let us save this one as state billboard query and run it. Look at that. So we get this window, right? So that's expected. That's how it's supposed to be when we have parameter query, right? Whenever you have this open square bracket, close bracket, so this is called as parameter. So this is called as parameter query. Again, this is called as parameter query, right? So enter parameter value question mark. So this is the enter state. That means whatever I put inside these square brackets will be displayed as a heading down below here, and then we have a box, right? So let us type in WA, right, and then say okay. Look at that. Did it display any records other than WA? No, because that's the criteria that is going to match, right? So let us run this one again. close it, and then that was state billboard query, right? So where is it? Which is right here. Double click on it to run it, and as you can see, window. This time I'm going to say give me a list of all the records whose state name equal to WY, right? Let's see if it brings any. Look at that. You see, each time you run, the value that you're going to type in the box can be different, right? So it gives more freedom and flexibility when we are putting in the criteria. So if not, like if we don't have parameter query, that means I need to write many queries with the criteria that I want, right? So parameter query is kind of a very efficient and useful way to define the criteria when we have a need to read that criteria from the user, right? To read the criteria, parameter query is used when there is a need to read the data from the user, and that data will be the criteria for the query, right? So let us save it and then close it. Okay, so that was step number 3. Moving on to step number 4. So create a new query in a design view based on 2 tables, right? So we're going to create a new query, and this time we're going to use add rep table as well as advertiser table. So create query design, and we're going to add 1 table at a time, add rep and advertiser. If you want, you can hold the shift key or a control key down, select 2 of them and then add it. And as usual, I'm going to expand this table so I can see all the fields. And notice when you do that, there is a line between here. So this is called as a relationship between tables. So this is the beauty of Access. You don't have a relationship in Excel. We have the ability to create a relationship only in Excel between tables, right? Now somebody has already created the relationship for us. Now the way they have created is like this. What is the primary key of our add rep table? Add rep number. Why? Because that's the key that's indicating its primary key. And if I use the same field in my different table, so this key becomes a foreign key. Why? Because the primary key of this table is advertiser ID, but I'm using this primary key of add rep table. I'm using the primary key of add rep table inside my advertiser table. So that's why it becomes a foreign key. So the way you create a relationship is actually you drag this one and then drop it onto this. I'm not doing drag and drop. Don't do it right now because there is already a relationship. So in Access module 3, we're going to learn how to create a relationship and then how to edit the relationship. Alright. So the goal is to add 2 tables, and this time this query will pull the records from 2 different tables instead of 1 single table that we used to do, right? So likewise, let us add these fields in the order. So when you click here, when you have 2 tables, and when you click on this field row, the first cell, so here we get this table name dot field name, alright? Table name dot field name, and likewise the first fields are all for add rep table, followed by the next fields are all your advertiser table, right? So excuse me, let me mute my phone so I don't hear. Alright, so let us add. So I want to add advertiser name from which table? Advertiser table. So when I have 2 tables, for me it will be easier to drag and drop it. So from advertiser table, I want advertiser name, drag this and then drop it onto the first cell under field row. And then I want first name, last name, phone number from add rep table. So I want first name, last name, and phone number. Notice as soon as you do that, Access actually knows which table it's coming from, and accordingly it will fill in the table row automatically, right? So that's the beauty of relationship. So save this query as query1, save as addrep-advertiser query. Query. Alright, now if you run it, it will pull the records from two different tables. Look at that. So these records, it's pulling from like the advertiser name field, the records are pulling from advertiser table, whereas first name, last name, phone number are getting from addrep table. See how cool it is? So this is how we can pull the records from two different tables. So basically you're pulling the field that you want from each table. Alright, so save, and then we're going to close it. Right? Alright, so that was 4. Moving on to 5th one. So open the unique cities query in a design view. Modify the query to list all cities only once. So we're going to click on the second field in the design grid. And then we're going to open the property sheet and then change the unique values property of the query. Alright. Now, so let us find here, scroll down. So here is my unique cities query open in a design view. Right. So I can resize this. And I'm going to expand this. Right now, without changing, let us run this query and see how many records do we get. How many records we got? 24. And do you see any duplicates among the records? Yes, right? So our idea is to remove these duplicates so that we get only the unique city names. Alright, so let's do that. Let us switch back to design view. And in order to do that, we're going to click on the second field. Not the first field, the second field. And then we're going to open, so expand your Access for a minute. And then here is under Query Tools Design tab, Show Hide button. So we're going to click on this property sheet. So this will open up. Let me move this one a little bit this side so you can see all the properties. So there is a unique values property. Right now it's set to no. Click on it. And then click on arrow next to that to set it to yes. So right click here, save the query, and then we're going to run the query. Oops. Alright, so we can run the query. So we can close the property sheet here. So let us run. This time we should get only unique records. Look at that. Earlier we had about 24, right? Something like that. Now we got only 18 records, and as you can see, there are no duplicates in our results, right? So save, close. Okay. So that was step number 5. Let me drink some water. You are welcome to drink as well. Okay, so moving on to step number 6. Let me see how many steps do we have here. So in module 2, we have about 18 steps. Alright, so we're getting there slowly. Alright, so step number 6 is to create what's called as crosstab query based on billboard table. So for this, we're going to use Query Wizard. Create tab, Query Wizard. And in here, remember we did simple Query Wizard for Access Module 1? This time, we're going to use crosstab query wizard. Say OK. And we get this wizard here. So the first thing that we want to tell Access is which table you want crosstab data. So which table are we interested in? We are interested in based on billboards table. So in here we're going to select the billboard and then hit next. So it says which table or a query contains the fields you want for the crosstab query result, right? So next thing it's asking which fields values do you want as a row heading. So this is the preview. So we have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. So these are your column headings. Your row headings are nothing right now, but you give it its own field. So use only data from billboard table, which we did. Use the state field for row headings. So we are interested in row headings. So we're going to use state field. And as soon as you do that, look at state 1, state 2, state 3, state 4, because we have 4 records in there. And then next task is to define the column headings. So the column headings you want is type field. So we have here 2 types of data. One is state and type. And this is generally used in statistics. So to create a crosstab, so at the intersection, you're gonna use some function, either count, sum, average, minimum, maximum, something like that. But anyway, so for this task we are interested in, so what is your column headings gonna be? Your type, right? So we have type 1, type 2, type 3. Next. So at the intersection, you need to tell Access what to do. So by default, we need to count billboard IDs for each states and then type, right? So basically, how many type 1 do we have under state 1? How many type 1 do I have under state 2? How many type 1 do I have under state 3? How many type 1 do I have under state 4? So that's what we are going to find. And look at the intersection of these two. We have count of billboard ID. So it's going to count how many. Alright, for each type and then by the state. So at the intersection, what do you want? Count of a billboard ID field as a calculated value for each row and column intersection, and include row sums in the crosstab query. So we have billboard ID here and then count. That's default. Let it be. Say next. And then we're going to change the name here. So we want, since we are doing state by type, so we're going to type as state hyphen type crosstab, right? So it's used when we have 2 different types of data. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? Notice we have, these are the 4 states we have, and these are the different types of, so we have bulletin, digital, junior poster, and then poster. So at the intersection, we got these numbers, right? So that's your count. So let us save this and close it, right? So that was 6. Moving on to 7. Open the top values query in a design view. Top values query, design view. So in here, modify the query to sort the current due amounts in a descending order, and then change the return values to display only top 25% of the records. Run the query, then save the query and close it. So our first task is to do the sorting for current due amount. So current due field is right here. Under sort row, right below current due, we want it ascending or descending? We want it descending order. Okay, so save that first. And not only that, in our results, I want to display only the top 25% of the records, right? So how do I do that? So expand your access for a minute. And right now it's under Query Tools, Design tab, Query Setup group. Right now it's returning all records that match whatever criteria that you have, right? So right now here we don't have any criteria, but it's going to display all the records from this table, right? So in here, you can select the top value. So you can say top 25%. Okay. So that's how you actually change. Give me the top 25. So that means look at the screen tip. It's telling you make the query display only the top number or a percentage of items from the result. Isn't that fascinating? I feel that's fascinating because X-axis gives us a lot of features to work with here. Alright, so as soon as you do that, let us save this. And so let us run it. I wish we ran it before we change it, but that's okay. Let me move my window here so you can see the run button. So basically current due. So these are the records who are at top 25%. And they are sorted in a descending order. That means current due from high to low, right? So let me switch back to design view, and then for now I'll just say return all records and then run it. So if you return all the records, we got all of these records, right? So among this, top 25% will be calculated. So we have about 24. So as soon as we changed it to top 25%, so let us run it. So you got only 6 records, right? So which is top 25 current due. Save, close. Okay. Oops, I wanted to do restore down. Alright. So that was 7th step. Moving on to 8. Open the Oregon Digital Query in a design view. So Oregon Digital Query, right click, design view. In here, we're going to add a criteria to select only those records where type field equal to digital, and notice the word and. So we're going to use and. That means we are not only just checking one criteria, we're going to check 2 criteria. Okay, so that means type field equal to digital and state field is equal to OR, that means Oregon. So run the query, then save the query. So this is where this is called as compound criteria. That means you can have 2 conditions at a time. So the resulted record would have matched these 2 conditions. If if the condition 1 should be true and then condition 2 should be true, only then it's gonna display that record for you, right? So let us add. For type field, we want to add criteria digital. So you can type digital, and then access is going to add those quotation marks on its own. You just use the right arrow to go to the next field, and that's when it's going to add the quotation mark. And then for state field, you want Oregon, so you're going to type OR and then use the right arrow again to go, and then you can click outside if you want to. If you don't like pressing the right arrow, you can just click outside this cell, and then that's when the access is going to add double quotes. Now here we have 2 criteria, right? So we have a state equal to OR and then a type equal to digital. Now access is going to pull the record, that particular record that matches both of these values, right? So if a record does not match, for example, state, it's going to ignore that. If a record that will not match digital, it's going to ignore that. That means it's only display the records who match both of the condition, like OR as well as digital. Okay, so let us save it and then let us run it. Look at that. Do you have any record which is not OR? Do you have any record which is not digital? No, right? Because these two are the criteria that you specify, and these are the only record that match these two criteria that you have, right? Isn't that beautiful? So this is how you can check more than one condition in a design grid. So for more than one field, we'll just add the criteria, right? So save, close. Alright, so that was it. Moving on to ninth one. So ninth one is basically doing what's called as creating a calculated field in your query. So what is a calculated field? Calculated field is a field that will calculate the result on the fly when I run the query. That means this field is not there in the table as of now, but it will create when I run it. So what will this field has? Generally it's an expression, right? So this is a label that I'm going to give for my calculated field, and what it's going to display is multiplication of two fields. For example, the square feet is the label that a new calculated field I'm going to have in my query. Notice the square feet field is not there in my table. Okay, but this field will calculate on the fly when I run the query, so which will be multiplication of a value in a height field and then a width field. Alright, so let us learn how to do that. So how to create what's called as calculated field. So which query we are interested in? Square feet area query, which is right here. Open in a design view. And generally we want to modify this query to compare the square footage of a bulletin board. So in the zoom dialog box of the first empty column in the design grid, so basically we have these fields. So we're going to select the first empty column here. So under field row, we're going to click on this arrow next to this, or we're going to right click, I suppose. Yeah, so you're going to right click, not left click. You're going to right click, and then we're going to use what's called as zoom function. Here we get this zoom window. Here we're going to type the expression as is. So what is, you're going to start with the label that you like for your calculated field, which is square feet. And make sure you write the uppercase as uppercase and lowercase as a lowercase. And then you need to type colon and no spaces. Alright, so we're going to open square bracket, height, close square bracket, multiply by, and this height and weight are actually your field names. Alright, and when you are defining a field names in an expression, you need to put the square brackets. Alright, so height, H-E-I-G-H-T, so make sure we don't have any spelling error here. If you misspell it, then it will say it cannot find the field name. Alright, say okay, and that's your calculated field. As you can see in this billboard table, we have a field called as height and width, and on the fly when we run the query, it's going to do multiplication of this entry and then this entry, right? So let us save it and let us run it. Look at that. We do not have this field in a table, but we added this calculated field on the fly. That means what is age multiplied by 24? And it's going to do it for each record, right? So let's use the calculator and check whether it did it correctly or not. I'm sure it's a computer. We asked it to do it. It might be correct. 8 multiplied by 24 is how much? 192. You see that? That's the calculated field. Why? Because we asked Access to do the height multiplied by width, and that's what it did for all the records. Isn't that awesome? I like it very much. And likewise, you can add your own calculated field in your query. So save, close. Now that calculated query is used when we want to perform like some calculations. Alright, so that was 9. Moving on to 10. Open the caption query in a design view. Caption query, design view. And modify the query by adding the caption for the facing field to direction. Alright, so let me expand my axis for a minute. So you want to add, for a facing field, you want to add a caption, right? So I think it will be under property sheet. So yeah, so click on the facing field and then click on the property sheet. So we have this property here. So next to the caption, so let me move my window here so you can read. So here is a caption property for a facing field, and what do you want as a caption? The facing field caption, you want it as direction, right? So let us put direction and save it, run it. The idea is caption is kind of another name for that particular field, and you will not see facing anymore because you added the caption. You will see director in that particular field. So let us run it. Look at that. So even the facing field is there in the table, but in the query, since you added the direction, is that a correct spelling? Let me double check. So let us switch back to design view and restore down. I think that's correct, right? DIRECTION. Yeah, that's correct. All right. So that's how you change a caption. That was 10. Moving on to 11. Open the, so we're done with this. Save, close. Okay, so as soon as done with an object, make sure you have the right hand side working area clear. So open the no current due date query in a design view. So no current due date query in a design view. And we're going to modify this query to show only records where current due field is equal to 0. So let us run this query as of now and see what we get. Right now we have the records that has all the records, right, who has the due date. But I'm interested in retrieving the records whose current due date is only equal to 0. That means I have about 3 records, I suppose, right? So let us learn how to. So we have this small set of records, so it's easy to see here. But if you have millions of records in it, then query is the way to go, right? Design view. So we're going to add a criteria, and this time it's a number, all right? So current due. I want criteria for a current due equal to 0. So that means I simply type 0. So we're not going to add double quotes here for numbers. We only add double quotes when we have short text data type. So current due, I think it's a currency. So even though you press the right arrow, notice it will not add the double quotes. So for all the numbers, it will be same, alright? So that means no double quotes. Without the double quotes, we're going to add the criteria. So save and run it. See, only I think 2 records. Yeah, so this was the extra one. So only 2 records have current due equal to 0, right? Save, close. So that was 11. Moving on to 12. Open Washington advertiser query in a design view. Washington advertiser query in a design view. So scroll down, I think it's all the way at the end. Design view. So what are we doing here? In here, we're gonna hide the state field in the query, save it, right? So how do you hide it? So there is a show row and just check mark it to hide it. That means the state field will no longer be displayed in your query results. So save it, run it. You see it's no longer there, right? So we just hidden it. If you go back to design view, the field is still there, but it's not showing in the query results, all right? So save and close, I think. Restore done. So that was 12. Moving on to 13. Open the billboard type query in a design view. Billboard type query, design view. Alright, so in here we're gonna add criteria to select only those records where type field equal to bulletin or to digital. Run the query and then save the query. So the type field equal to, so right first we're gonna put our first criteria. Even though we have two criteria, we're gonna use it as an OR operator here. So we have a row called as OR. So for the OR condition, we're gonna put under OR. So for the first one, we're gonna put under criteria. So the first criteria, type field equal to what? Bulletin. So since type field is a short text, as soon as you press the right arrow, it's gonna add those double quotes, and it didn't do it for number, right? So that's how it recognizes from our short text versus number value. And then for the same field, right? Is it same field? Yeah. So add the criteria to select only records where type field equal to bulletin or digital. So we're gonna put OR under R row. Alright, so make sure you do it under R row. We're gonna type digital and then either click outside or click any cell to see the double quotes. Alright, now it's gonna display the records whose type field either bulletin or digital. So we don't get any other records other than these two. Look at that. Even though we had journal poster records, it will not display those records. Why? Because this is my condition. You're saying given the records whose type is equal to digital or bulletin, right? So either way. So you only get these records based on these two types of values. Cool? So that's your R. That means any row, any record that match digital, it's going to display. Any record that match bulletin, it's going to display, right? So that is our condition. Save and close. That was 13. Moving on to 14. Open multiple sort query in a design view. Multiple sort query. Where is it? Here. In a design view. Alright, so modify the query to sort records in an ascending order first by the add rep number field and then advertiser name field. Alright, so add rep number sort, you want ascending first, and then you want to do the ascending as well for advertiser name. Save. Run it. I would like all this query to run before we modify it. Oops, I closed it. Alright, I'm going to run it by opening. Now notice, first it sorted the add rep number from A to Z. And then it sorted the advertiser ID from... so basically, it sorted this and then this is a secondary, right? So in a sense that it only sorts the first one and then the second one is actually automatic, right? So it needs to display that record AM01 first, and then I think among their GS, I think for each group, I think, is it sorted? Yeah. So B, G, or For each group, I think we have IMW and then CKL. So for each group, actually it's sorted within that, right? So that's the multiple sort. Save and close. So that was 14. 4 more steps. The 15th one, open small audience query in a design view. Small audience query, design view. So in here we're going to add a criteria to select only those records where the value DC field is less than 200. Not only just exact match, you can add the criteria using what's called as these relational operators. The relational operators are greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to, or not equal to. Okay, so in this case, for the DEC field, I want to add a criteria. So far we've been doing exact match. This time not only exact, I want to check its value to see whether it's greater than or less than. So I want to say less than, that means less than symbol in algebra. And then what is the value? 2000, right? So daily effective circulation, again, if you click on any cell, no double quotes. Why? Because this is a number, right? So let us save, run it. Now notice, look at the DEC value. Is it less than 2000? Do you see any value greater than 2000? No, right? That was our criteria. And it's working. That's how you check whether it worked or not, right? So you look at the records to see it matched any. So 16th, open billboard by type query. So billboard by type query, design view. Modify it by adding totals to the query and then as described below. So in addition to field, table, sort, show, criteria or row, we can also bring in our statistical row called as totals. How do we do that? So in the query design, under query tools, design tab, show hide group, look at our totals, right? So you're going to click on it to bring it and it will add right below your table row, right? So generally it's used for doing group by and then doing all your statistical functions, which is sum, average, min, max, count, standard deviation, first, last, expression, and also there is a where condition, okay? So we're going to learn them slowly, but for now, let's do this step. So that's how you bring in totals value. Don't say that you don't have it. So you need to, by default, you do not have it. You need to go get it by clicking on Query Tools, Design tab, Show Hide button, click on this Summation Totals button, right? Alright, so for the type field, you want to set total row to group by. I think that's the default, we don't need to change. But for a billboard ID, the total rows should be count. Okay, so type field, group by, billboard ID, count, right? So that's it. Run the query. And as you can see, we got all the billboard ID count. And then these are grouped by, I think there are 8 records which is of type bulletin. There are 9 records which is of type digital. 7 records which is of type junior poster, 13 records which are of type poster, right? So that's how you group the items and then count how many are there for each category. So save and close. So next is 17th step, 2 more to go. So we want to open G advertiser ID, advertiser query in a design view. And in here, we're going to use what's called as wildcard criteria. So what is a wildcard? So wildcard is basically when you're matching any combinations of characters or an individual character. Generally, we have star if you want to match. Give me all the records whose beginning letter is capital G, and then I do not care any character after that. right? So that's what you're saying using star. That means I care what is my beginning letter is, which is in this case G star, in this case G, and then star is a wild card. That means as soon as Access sees this, it's any character after this, it's not gonna worry about it. That means it's gonna only look for the value which is G, and if it finds it, it's gonna display that particular record in your result, right? So add the G star wildcard character to the advertiser name field. So it's going to look at all the records in the advertiser ID field, and that should be criteria, isn't it? Yep, criteria. And then it's going to look at each record, and for each record it's going to say, does advertiser name begin with capital G? If it is, then it's going to display that record in your results, in your results basically, right? So, and then if a record does not have G, then it will not be under your results, right? So that's D star, and then press right arrow, and notice how you got the like keyword. That means for Access, it need to know whether G star was at a value that you are trying to look for exact match, or is it a wild card? So whenever we have the star, Access automatically adds the like keyword. That means that's how it knows that it should not look for G star letter as is. Instead, it wants to look for G, but then star is kind of a special character which is called as wild card, right? So as soon as it sees that, it's gonna perform that. But let's run it and see. Now, do you have any records which does not start with G? No, right? And then it didn't care what other records, what other characters we have in after capital G, right? So that's what star means. That means match for capital G, and then match any character after that. It could be any character. So that's what star means. I do care the beginning is G, but then after that, if I have any character, I don't care. Just give me the list, right? So that means it displayed 4 records here. So that's what G star, in other words, the wildcard character does. 17th step. Moving on to last step is your 18th step. Use the report wizard to create a new report based on all advertiser query with the following options. So first select all advertiser ID, advertisers query, right? So this is the query, and then create. Notice report and form can be created based on query or a table. So we are interested in report wizard. Probably, let me see. So use the report wizard to create a new report. So let me expand this so I can see all the options. Yeah, now I see it. So all advertiser queries. So under create tab, report group. So we're going to select report wizard. And now I want to read the instructions, do I? Alright, so let me remember how the icon looks like. So which is like a, alright, so I got it. And then I'm going to restore down. So I think this is a report wizard button. And we're going to include these fields and then follow these directions, right? So include all the fields from here. So how do I do that? So just click on this 2 double greater than icon to push all of them. Next. And group the report by last name. So it's asking, do you want to add any grouping levels? Yes. So last name, push it. Okay. And use no additional grouping in the report. Okay. Let me see, can I push this one back? No, that's selected. Okay, good. Next. So what sort order and summary information do you want for details? So do we need any sorting? So we says no additional sorting, so we don't need any sorting. Hit next. and then use stepped layout and portrait orientation. By default stepped, and then by default portrait. We don't need to worry. And hit next, and set the title for the report too. So it's asking what's the title, so we want all advertiser report, so we'll just delete the query and then add report. Okay, finish. So there you go, that's your report. So this is the title, and then we have group by last name, and then advertiser name, so, and then current dues, right? So we included all the fields, and then they're grouped by the last name, right? Alright, close and restore down. I think that's it. Preview and then close. So the last step is, and this is how it's supposed to be, and that's how it's showing. Close, and then any open object, and then we're going to do compact and repair, right? So I have nothing open here, so I'm good. File, compact and repair. It says you attempted to open a database that is already opened by admin, So when I get this message, I would recommend close it, close access, go to your folder where you saved where you saved your file, so online and online again, and access module 2, so open it. Now if you do file, compact repair, it will work. You see, the control should come back to access without any error. That's when you know that it worked. Alright, so close, and we have one single file, so close all the access objects. Now you are ready to upload, right? Browse, and this is access module 1. I don't want that. I want access module 2. File, open. So time for checking the score, right? Let's do it. I think it's taking a while. Alright. Close. And that's your score. 100%. Okay. Cool. So that's your access module 2. So I'll bring up another video. I'll make another video for access module 3. So I'll see you in that video. Alright. So enjoy. Thank you guys for watching.